The latest news I want to bring to light. Yes, I've got some news, and the last year has been very, very challenging. A lot of you have probably noticed my sudden weight loss, and I've had some very caring viewers that have reached out. Thomas, for example, was the latest one, and I just wanted to address this because I've been seeing comment after comment, people saying, we're worried about you. You've lost a lot of weight. You don't look like you did even a year or 2 years ago. Is something wrong? Are you feeling okay? You better get that checked out. And I really, really do appreciate all of the meaningful questions and the inquiries and the care and the fact that clearly a lot of you really do care about my well-being. I've been doing exotic car play place here for quite some time, actually almost precisely to 10 years when I started the channel way back. But things have been changing. And we all get older, we know that. We all get older, but things have changed a lot for me in the last year. And I want to kind of break this down because really, even the visual appearance has changed quite dramatically in the last year. I'm trying to sport a little bit more of the facial hair, although I could buzz that off at the drop of a hat. But clearly there's been a pretty substantial weight loss, and in a kind of a short period of time. Now, I know a lot of people often say, when you see sudden weight loss, that could be indicative to numerous serious medical conditions. And so I want to talk about how this came about and kind of where this is at and where I'm going from this point forward. And is there a future in the channel? And what does that all look like? And definitely want to stick around because I want to share the story. So talk about 10 years ago, I really started this channel because of my love for cars. I loved it. I enjoy cars. They're fun. New cars, old cars, fun cars. Everything with four wheels and a steering wheel I've always found pretty entertaining. So that's sort of where it all started 10 years ago. But, fast forward, I was also working in a corporate job. And if you're on one of my other channels, I do have a retirement channel that I've been kind of talking about more or less about how this all kind of came about. But, I was always working a corporate job for the last, as long as I can remember. And up to about a year ago, and I'll say specifically February 28th, 2024, is where things all just changed so dramatically. Now, I want to scale this back a little bit. Back, you saw, for myself, I experienced some loss. We all do at some point. We all do. My father, we lost him in March 5th, 2021. And so in the meantime, my mother hasn't been feeling well, and her health has been overall declining, deteriorating over the course of, a number of years, dealing with serious health problems and decline. And finally, unfortunately, that hit hard this year. So February 28th, I was working corporate job, major changes, reshuffles, and it was time to leave. So essentially, my career in the corporate world actually formally came to a crashing halt on February 28th. Now, that said, the year didn't that's where it sort of started. But there was more to this equation. Then dealing with, of course, the health issues with my mother, that went on into the hospital. And unfortunately, the end of March 27th to be precise, 2025, we lost my mother. So that was a very hard day too. And so she passed away about a year ago. And now dealing with all of that, as an executor to an estate, that's something I've been extremely busy with, extremely preoccupied, extremely stressed out, lots going on, lots to deal with. But more importantly, just the loss in general. So the loss of a job, the loss of parents, and then we extend that because now in this time frame, I've also experienced the loss of a couple of good friends of mine, a couple friends that I've had around for quite some time. Things change, people change, and maybe it's a little bit of me and my, my overzealous nature of, being involved in the channel and really hyper focused on what I do and trying to deliver the goods to each and every one of you. You always got to look inwards, right? Is there something I did? But ultimately, I lost a couple friends this year, not physically, but in spirit, and they're no longer. It's clear that they no longer really want to have a major part of my life. So things changed there. I lost a couple of friends, lost my parents, and I lost a job. And most of that happened this year, almost exactly a year ago. So what happened? Well, lots happened. I continued dealing with all of the loss, the executive, the estate stuff, but I also continued driving on and trying to develop channel content, trying to develop better content, more valuable content, more diverse content that a lot of you are finding interesting, and certainly trying to deliver information that means something to all of you. That means having good cars, reliable cars, fun cars. I mean, life is too short to drive boring cars ultimately, right? And so I truly do live that. But in the midst of all of this emotional crisis and change in my life, that's not just once, like they say, when it rains, it pours, and it was truly a deluge. This year has been an absolute hammer session of change and loss. And so things have changed. But I thought about this for a second. If I can even say, I had to go see a new doctor, because the old doctor, which I had for years, it was time for a checkup and I wanted to reach out, had a couple things I wanted to deal with. So I reached out to the doctor, but his office was closed. So sometime in the last couple of years, it's been a couple of years since I went, he closed his shop and retired. He was an older gentleman. I love the guy. He was awesome. But it was, I guess we all retire at some point. So I had to search for a new doctor. But in doing so, this conjured up memories and thoughts. And, for many, many years, going to see the doctor, he always kind of planted the seed. You know what? Look at the BMI chart. Your weight you're here. But realistically, even though you're not, it wasn't considered obese. I wasn't overly large or anything by any means. But, even by the doctor's perspective, the BMI charts and the fat content and all of that, overall my health was good for years. Great, a lot, really good for many years. And the one thing that stayed with me for all these years from my previous doctor was him saying that you've got to ideally shed a little bit of weight, a little bit. You've got a little extra around the mid, you've got a little extra here, a little bit. You can just tell. And I fluctuated up and down for years, kind of up and down 10 pounds one way or the other, in and around that certain, that weight. And so it was always a bit of a point that my doctor made on the way out, and one of those impromptu tongue-in-cheek kind of comments that he had said, you've got to lose a little bit of weight. Not a lot, but realistically, if you could shed probably 20 pounds, you're probably right in the sweet spot for your bone, your bone density, your mass, the size, the structure of your body, the height and everything. You probably should realistically lose about 20 pounds. Now, I never thought I had that extra poundage hanging around, but this year I kind of realized that. And so things changed this year, with all this loss, all this change and this stress, anxiety, all of this happening all at once brought some change in me, and some of it physical, some of it not, a lot of it definitely up here. And we speak about a lot of people dealing with things and crises in different ways. Well, I kind of went inside. I went introvert on that a little bit, but I did change. And keeping my doctor's notifications in mind, he always said, you've got to deal with a little bit of weight loss. So what I did was, this last year, I took care of some outstanding medical things. I dealt with some teeth and some dentist work that I had to get done. I had a couple minor, medical issues that I was kind of hanging around, and I wanted to make sure and get them checked out, and I had them looked at. And otherwise, for the most part, the health looks to be pretty good. But that said, because the weight loss thing, I decided, you know what? I'm going to become very, very busy, very, very active. And the last thing I want to do is, after leaving a job that you've been working at 40, 50, 60 hours a week, is sit around and get bored. I also want to ramp up and amp up a lot of my content. I created some other channel content. I've got a few other channels on the brew. But the last thing I wanted to do was sit around, and I wanted to continue developing great content, and in different ways, different voices, different angles, and different dimensions. And so I started a few other channels. But in doing that, I also kept very busy, and I incorporated exercise and a little bit of a carnivore or a minor carnivore diet, or a bit of a hybrid. It's not where I've cut everything, but I've really focused on, instead of having that big chunky high carb breakfast, all these breads and all these things, I started cutting a lot of that out. I just said, I know that's not good for you. High carbohydrates. I tried to reduce some of the sugars. While I love my coffee, there's some things, a guilty pleasure, you can't do without. So I decided to continue on drinking my coffee, doing coffee talks and walks on one of my other retiree channels. But I incorporated much, much more exercise in my diet. Of course, dieting, a lot more carnivore, so a little bit more meat, less carbs, less sugars, and lots of walking. So a lot of people have asked me this question, you've lost a lot of weight. I'll be honest, I feel great. I absolutely feel amazing. So from a health perspective, I truly feel better. I have less of that breathlessness. I feel a little more energetic. I have less headaches. I just feel more lively. I feel like when the morning hits, I'm up and running and I want to get going. And that's good. It serves well because I'm very active and busy in creating content for all of you. And in doing so, I get out there and I grab my coffee. I do these walks. And you know what, Thomas, and many of you who have asked the question, are you okay? I like to believe you never know what you don't know, but ultimately I feel amazing. And I chalk this massive weight loss now up to this partial carnivore diet, restricting a lot of carbs, and more specifically walking 5, 10, in some cases 12 to 15 miles every day, 5 days a week. So I feel great. I've lost weight. Yeah, we all age. That's part of it. I know putting facial hair on there doesn't necessarily help with the look. And, when you shed a lot of weight and you put some facial hair, it can really exacerbate the look. If I were to trim that off, I know I would look probably 15 years younger. To be totally honest, this sudden weight loss, I was told by my doctor years ago that I should probably shed some, and sort of in an indirect way, his conversations over years sort of tweaked me. At this moment of loss, I had a lot of time to reflect. I had a lot of time to reflect on the overall health, relationships, wife, my kids, and everything's, honestly, it's been a lot better because I've been home a lot more to see, my family have been involved much more in their lives. And I truly do believe that life's got 10 times better. Health's gotten better. Relationships at home have gotten better. The channel content is, working on making that better as much as I physically can. So I'm constantly focusing on delivering good content. And the question about what does the future look like for Exotic Car Play Place? What does the future look like for me? Well, long and illustrious, hopefully. But I do see myself ideally continuing on this path of content creation. We know the car market is changing. We know it's shifting. It's adapting. I love fun and fast cars. And I think having a car like that in the garage at any point always makes a lot of sense for me, because I do believe that it's true to my mantra, my own personal internal beliefs. But as much as you want to have an F-Type or a Lamborghini or a Ferrari or a McLaren or any of those cars in the garage, or a Porsche, those are great for, fun drives. But it's equally important to have a frugal driving experience for cars that you're piling on miles. So cars that you're commuting to school and work, and maybe you're doing those quick jaunts to the grocery stores. You don't want to drive a McLaren to pick up groceries. You don't want to drive a Ferrari to school. You don't want to drive a 911 Turbo to work every day. While they'll all work, they'll get you there. The fact remains is the high cost of maintenance, the chances of something happening go up, especially you're driving it every day. The weather is inclement at times. And so high probability of expensive repairs, expensive maintenance, something happening to it because you're on the road more when people are aggravated during the commute to work, right? You're heading to work. People drive like nuts. They're aggressive, they're angry, they're busy, they're running late. So quite often people are agitated, and you don't need that type of driving in space around you in your bubble when you're trying to enjoy your driving experience in your McLaren. So saving those special drives is great for a Saturday night, and I always feel like I need that car in my life. That said, I always need a reliable car, an easy car to maintain, an affordable car that makes sense, that I can pile the miles on. I love driving this old truck. I love driving the Camry. I love driving the Toyota Corollas and Camry and the Honda Civics, because they're such charming cars in the fact that they don't cost you much money to drive. You get in, there's no weird check engine lights, there's no weird faults, no weird codes. They just work. And that to me inspires a lot of internal confidence. And I know a lot of you value fun cars. A lot of you value even more having something that's just affordable and reliable. And I see the value in both. I'm truly a Jekyll and Hyde. That's why a car like a BMW M5 with the E60 with the V10 has always resonated with me, because it's that Jekyll and Hyde. And maybe some call that dual personality. I don't know. But I love there's that two aspects, and it's two dynamics, and they're very distinctly different. And I truly believe they both have a place in my life. And all of you and your special cars have a place in my life, because I truly believe, and I think that it's so important to have cars that you can trust, that aren't going to cost you a ton of money. Because in a lot of ways, cars are a utility function. It's the same as a cell phone. It's the same as a bicycle. It's the same as a pair of shoes. They all serve a purpose. In other words, many of these cars are designed just to get you around, get you from A to B, and they're functional. They're utilitarian. But a lot of times people, specialists, enthusiasts, people that love these special driving experience also love cars for other reasons. And I love cars for all of those reasons. So that's why I'm going to continue on creating content. Now, at my age, I can honestly say I've probably, depending on what the platform has in store, depending on what the future has in store, the evolution of the car industry is coming on fast and furious. We're hearing in 10 years from now, a lot of countries are saying they're going to be fully mandated to be pure electric. Well, I don't like be mandated anything. I like to drive what I like to drive. And if it's ICE, yes. If it's a hybrid, sure, if it serves the purpose. I mean, some people like electric vehicles. That's fine. But nobody should be telling any of us what we need to be driving. I'm here to only advise on what I personally believe are best choices, right? You want a reliable car? I'm going to give you those choices. You want a high-performance car? I'll give you the best sports cars. You want to know some other features and aspects of those cars? Best SUVs, best luxury cars, best daily commuters. I'm going to share that with you because it matters. I mean, cars are a very part of the Western culture and the society today. I mean, you look across Europe, Canada, United States, so, even Japan, some of the biggest car cultures exist in those countries. And it's not just about the basic commute. It's about enjoying a car. It's about polishing the car. It's about looking after it. And some people like wrenching on their cars. A lot of people do. I love DIYs. A lot of people feel that, the less they have to open the hood, the better. And in a lot of ways, that's true, but a lot of people like to do their basic maintenance, do an oil change, filters. Actually, as a matter of fact, yesterday, I did a little bit of maintenance on our Honda Civic. It was time, oil change, tire rotation. There was also transmission flush, which I'm not doing that yet. I'll explain that on another time. But I did, oil change, spark plugs, as well as air filters. And I did it in no time flat. And I love wrenching on cars. So I want to share some of my passions for cars with you. But again, I wanted to address this question. Thank you, Thomas. And thank you, many other viewers who have expressed concern that said, look, you've lost a lot of weight. Are you feeling okay? you may want to check with a doctor. Well, the fact is, now I have checked with doctors. I have been looking after health, and probably in better ways than I have realistically for quite a few years. That said, with loss of, parents, loss of a job, loss of friends, there was a lot of loss this year, and it was a really hard, trying year. And I can't even begin to explain the amount of almost trauma. And we all see loss in different ways, in different amounts, at different times in our life. But for me, it felt like it was so much, so quickly, and so intensely that there was some struggles this year. There were some dark moments. There were some of those long walks by myself, staring into the sky, aimlessly wondering what's in store. The future was very uncertain. That to counter on the politics that have been going on in this country too. It's been a very trying time, very polarizing in that regard as well. And in that sense, there's just been so much going on in this last year, this last 365 and slightly beyond now. February 28th of 2024 feels like when it all really started kicking into high gear. I mean, if you could scale us back realistically, the loss of my dad back in 2001, that's kind of where it all started. But we're just a product of our environment, right? We navigate this thing called life throughout years, and sometimes these challenges are easy and sometimes these challenges are huge. And it's going to test our wares every single time. Sometimes it's an easy thing to deal with. Boom, check, get that out of the way, fixed. Sometimes it's a long, drawn-out process. Sometimes you can't just check it and fix it. I have a friend that was diagnosed with a serious health condition. And unfortunately, it's one of those situations that it's not just get a surgery or get this small treatment or get this ointment or this cream or this pill and it's fixed. It's a chronic problem that will only degenerate over years or months and only progressively get worse to the final end. See, not all challenges that we see and experience we can fix with a $100 bill, or we can fix just by going out and getting it done. Some things are just there, and it's luggage and it's baggage. And Lord knows I've had some of my share of baggage and luggage and things going on this year and beyond. But, as we move on, this year looks like to be brightening up. The sun seems to be creeping through the clouds. The clouds are slowly separating. We dealt with my parents, the burials. We went through all of the selling of all the goods and the home and dealing with all of that. Now we're still wrapping up the taxation side of it, getting that cleaned up. But that's still in the works. It takes a long time to get a lot of this behind you. Now, we don't forget. We should never forget. We should always remember, because those things, our parents, our friends, our jobs, all were a big part of who we are today. And my exposure as a young kid to that first Lamborghini Countach I saw in the Alpine poster in a stereo store was one of my first exposures to exotic cars, and that has been one of those forming moments. That conversation with my dad about the fact that one day I'll buy one was one of those defining moments. But, as we go through life and we deal with health issues, loss, and friends and family, it changes us. Sometimes makes us better, stronger, faster. Sometimes it hurts us. And it's been a trying year. It's been a very trying year. And there's really no other way to wrap that up other than the fact that, on a positive note, things are looking better. Things are looking brighter. The health is good. I'm feeling better than I have in a long time. Knocking on wood, I haven't had a cold in forever. I haven't been sick for a long time. I feel better. Overall, I can't even express. Just a lot of the little ailments just don't feel like that as much. A lot of the stress has been slowly dissipated. The chronic illnesses that my parents were dealing with, you forget, you remember those, you navigate that with your parents, with your family through life. But in some ways, there's a sense of closure. And so that closure is now helping a little bit. There's a bit of healing, if you will. There's a bit of healing as we move on now from closure of that door and those chapters. We remember, we'd never forget, but just knowing that they're in a better place. They're in a peaceful state now. So there's a closure, and the clouds are separating. The sun's coming out, and life feels a lot brighter. Much brighter. Feeling better. We reflect on our parents and our relationships, and even the loss of the friends. I've got to believe that while maybe they no longer want to be part of my life, maybe it was something I was doing. Maybe it was something I was saying. Possibly. We always have to reflect and ask a question. Is it something I did? Is it something I said? Whatever it is, all we know is we can make ourselves better. Looking forward, we're going to make ourselves better in life, relationships, cars, and in this case, my passion, of course, too, is delivering car news in the best way that I physically can. And so we're going to continue delivering the goods from Exotic Car Play Place, as well as 6-speed reviews. I'm starting to get that channel. It's almost monetized now. And as well, on top of it, easy car buying, which is a space. So I really focus on the buying experiences and the affordability aspect of buying cars, rather than not so much on the technical side. Of course, my Retiree is Me channel, and I talk about that life, that transition out of corporate world into retirement. Now, granted, am I retired? Yes, from the corporate game, 100%. But I still work, and I'm active, and I'm very busy creating channels and now developing this structure of channel content to make it better for each and every one of you. So I'm not going anywhere anytime soon. And for a lot of you that think, okay, maybe he's got a year or 2 years. Hopefully I've got 10 or 15 years left. Again, as I've kind of alluded to, depending on what the platform's doing and holding for us, depending on what the industry's doing, this transition to hybrids and EVs and electrification do present some different types of content maybe down the road, maybe years down the road. But for now, we're going to slowly, gradually incorporate some of that. We know that we talk about hybrid cars and this and that, but a lot of us are still passionate about internal combustion vehicles, cars that have that rumble, that shake, that vibration, where we can do an oil change on it, where we can wrench it ourselves, where we can fix some of these, where they're reliable and they're trustworthy, and all those great things that we've learned about the automotive industry. I'm going to continue talking about them because I've lived a life in the automotive space for years. And even though I worked in a corporate game, in an office environment for the last how many years, I truly felt my true passion and calling was continuing developing car content. And I've been doing that for 10 years. And I hope to do that for another 20 years. But time will tell. So for those that have asked the question concerned about my overall health, yes, get a little older, a few more grays. But honestly, the weight loss, I chalk it up more to a change in lifestyle. Watching a little bit better what I eat, not indulging as much. Less of the carbs, more of the meat, carnivore diet. Putting on 5 to 10 miles and beyond every single day. All of that has incorporated and combined to create a healthier lifestyle. Yes, I've shortened up. I've tightened up numerous belt sizes. Yes, I'm fitting in some clothes I didn't fit in before, but now some of the clothes I was wearing don't fit and they look silly on me. So I'm sort of changing up wardrobe as well, and things are changing. But I have to express a true thanks to a few types of groups. Number one, this year has been extremely trying, and I want to thank all of you for being there through this last year, through the last 10 years, from the OGs to the more recent subscribers and followers of the channel and members of the channel. I want to thank all of you for the ongoing support and the comments and the suggestions and the feedback. I want to thank all of you. But I also want to thank my wife, absolutely amazing. Through all of these changes in my life and the things that we've been going through, she's been absolutely a rock solid, and has kept me grounded. And to all my kids who have put up with all my grumbling and growliness throughout this last course of a year, my kids have been amazing, my wife's been amazing, and you've all been very amazing. So much for all of that. I know it's been rambling on, but my full intent is to continue delivering the best content I can related to cars, the best cars, the worst cars. I want to share all of that with you. You've probably noticed there's been a little bit of a negative twist in the channel throughout the last year. There's probably been a vibe of a lot of the worst and the ugliest yes. And a lot of that is a bit of my own journey going through, my own personal life. Now, granted, there's always going to be pointing out the best and the worst and this, that, and the other. But I do try to focus. There's going to be more of a stronger focus as well on positivity this year. The best, the positive, and the more winning perspectives rather than more losing perspectives. So I want to share all of that with all of you here as the next number of months and years go on. So thanks again, everybody, for the support. Thanks again, everybody, for all the ongoing help through all of this. But again, as always, over and out. And again, as they say at Exotic Car Play Place, what's that saying again? Life's too short to drive boring cars. We'll see you all real soon. Bye-bye, everybody.